Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Just Feminism, where we try to answer some simple yet complicated questions like what is feminism, who are feminists, what do feminists do, and can feminism actually change the world? Well, the guests of this series will show you by example that not only does feminism have potential to change the world, they're actively doing it. My name is Aurora, I'll be your host, and as you can see, this episode is a bit different. We're outside. Why are we outside? Well, the reason why is because we got a special opportunity to visit the Women's Archive located in Canada's capital, and that is not Toronto, no, not Vancouver, Ottawa. Can you believe it? I didn't know. I'm just joking, of course. Anyway, we're gonna meet Marina, who is the head of the Women's Archive. She's gonna show us around the archive and gonna answer some questions as well about her work as the archivist. I just can't wait to see it and experience it with you all. Please let me know in the comments if this type of episode is something that is more interesting to you than just sit down interviews. If you want to see some other place in Canada that I could visit that is, connected to the feminist movement. But please, while you're at it, make sure to be nice in the comments down below. Any type of violence or hate speech will not be tolerated. We are here to create a safe environment in which all of us can learn and grow together and fight for the causes that we all believe in. Okay, are you ready? Let's go!
Wow!
How did you first get into the archival business
Archival
profession?
world? Yeah, that's a good question. So I have an undergrad degree in history, and I really wasn't sure what I was going to do after that. My mother's a librarian, and I didn't want to be like her at all. So I was looking around for different careers, and I had actually gone to an archive during my undergrad to do a little project, and thought it was pretty cool. I was really interested in artifacts and objects, and I did something completely different from my mother, not libraries but archives. So I did a program at the University of Toronto, a master's in information studies, and I focused on the archives. And I was very lucky right after I graduated to get a job at the Provincial Archives in Ontario. So I was there for a couple of years. It was a great place to work because it really gave me a really solid foundation in working in archives and getting to see all of the things that archivists do. So from appraising records, deciding whether or not they're worthwhile keeping, to processing them, and also offering reference services. And then I made my way through a few jobs here and there, and then ended up working at the University of Toronto in the archives for one of the colleges there. It was more historical of an archive. A lot of the material we had there was, I'd say pre-1950s. So really, the history of the college, early graduates, that sort of thing. And then I saw the job posted here at the University of Ottawa. I'm originally from Ottawa, but I've been away since a long time. It's been about, almost 20 years since I had lived in Ottawa. And said to my husband, "You feel like moving to Ottawa?" And he said, "Sure." Apply for the job, and then got it. I don't come from a feminist background. I didn't know a lot about the history when I started here, and that's probably been one of my favorite things, is really getting to discover that history, learning from the material that we have here. And as I said, this history is so alive. All of these issues, that are seen in the records are still with us today, or a lot of them are. So, it's really fascinating, and it feels really important. I've worked with some really cool archives, but I have to say that this is history that's really alive and really exciting to work with.
Still fighting the fight for
That's right.
abortion, for equal wages, for work-life balance, and things like that.
I'm a new mom, and one thing that's really struck me is the fight for childcare, access to childcare, because I'm dealing with that right now, and they've been fighting for that for a long time. So, and it is interesting. There's some researchers from the daycare that's on campus that's unfortunately it might be closing, and so they're coming in, and looking at some of the protests that were happening in the 80s, and learning from what was done in the past to try and ensure that the daycare is saved. So I think that's really cool, right? So
I can't believe right now we're having Olympic Games in France, and for the first time ever they included childcare or like village for
Yes,
children,
right.
so parents can be with them.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same time, childcare systems here are closing down.
Exactly.
Like there aren't
Yeah.
Women who are researchers and who need some help
Yeah.
with organizing.
So I know it's
Depressing.
it is depressing.
Not gonna lie.
So that's an example of why these records are so important. It's so important to document this history because we're learning from the past, right? We're ensuring that the activities that these women were doing are known for the future.
It proves that this is not a new fight.
No.
Some people who are against feminist movements say, oh no, this is something new. It is a trend or something, but it is a legacy over 100 years of activists, of women, mothers, gays, and everybody else who just wanted to be accepted and have their own chance to have a life that they deserve.
Exactly, for sure. And that's all documented here, so that's very cool.
And how old are these?
They're a mix from late 60s to 90s. Black, that's a pretty special one.
Can you share the story of it?
Yes, of course. So Henry Morgentaler was an activist and doctor performing abortions in Canada prior to their legalization, and he was fundamental in ensuring that abortions became legal in Canada. This is actually from the clinic in Toronto that was firebombed in 1992. So it's pretty cool that we have this.
Yes, and there is another one which has red stains on
That's
it.
exactly it. So that one is on loan to the Human Rights Museum in Winnipeg. So that one's completely graffitied over. So obviously there was lots of people who supported the work that he did, but then other people who didn't. So it's such a good one. Just love her expression.
Oh yeah, she's fed up with it.
She is fed up, for sure.
What would you say now when we are still struggling with the same issues?
Oh, I know, and I think that's a lot of the things that we're dealing with, and why this collection is just so fascinating is that, all the things that they were struggling for 30, 40 years ago, it's still going on today, right? The frustrating part of this work is that you're just really seeing that, these things that they were fighting for at the time is still stuff that we're dealing with today. So
we would be even further behind if they weren't for them. So.
Exactly. Some of them we have actually images of some of the women who started the Canadian Women's Movement Archives, which I can talk about. I'm just wondering if these are in here. I just pulled out one of the folders, but it's kind of fun to see those original people that were involved. Oh yeah, these are also great photos. One of the questions that you had asked was, what are people most interested in? People love seeing the protest photos. They're great, right? So just really seeing all the things that people were fighting for.
Yeah, and most of those people are even still today.
They're still,
here.
Exactly.
Their grannies who are also protesting today.
That's right. I know we were just talking with a colleague of mine talking about, protest was such a huge thing in the 70s and 80s, and I don't know if today we're doing such a good job of keeping that up as much as maybe we should be. We focus all of our attention on the Women's Archives. It's really sort of, I think it's the most, subjectively, I think it's the most important collection that we have, but we also do have the records of a UFO researcher. So his name was Arthur Bray, and he collected a ton of material related to UFOs. So these are all periodicals related to UFOs, and right behind you we have this large collection of UFO books. And then we also have his research papers as well. So we get a ton of researchers really interested in UFOs. We put the records online probably about a year ago, and so since they've been online, it's definitely one of our #1 things that are searched for in our collection is UFO material. So
You said you saw a spike in like your website
yes,
analytics.
yeah. So on our database, we have the what's popular this week, and by far, let's say thousands and thousands of hits for some record in that collection. So it's just sort of funny because none of us are real UFO enthusiasts. So it's just funny that became our most popular.
Maybe we should make like a feminist UFO.
We should, right?
Or the
Yeah.
UFO stands for feminist or something.
How can we mix the two, right?
And where do all of these materials come from?
Yeah, majority of all of our archival donations come from donations. It's people that have just been collecting things, activists, regular people even, a lot of family members of women that were involved in the movement. So it's coming from the public. Yeah, it's just donations. So people find out about us either through friends that have donated in the past or the legacy of the Canadian Women's Movement Archives, which I can talk about a little bit more. But they approach us and say, we have this material, and I take a look at it and decide whether or not it's a good fit for us, and then it comes here. So
how do you decide what's
so that's the most, I guess that's the
Space is
trickiest
limited.
part of my job, right? So of course we do have a limited amount of space. This room that we're in is our storage area. It's not that big, and it does also contain the university's rare book collection as well. So that takes up a big chunk of space in here. So it's tough. I have to say no to a lot of material that's offered to us. We are mostly interested in collecting material that supports the records that we have in the feminist archives right now. Records documenting activist activities from 1960s to the present. Currently, though, we are sort of reviewing what we have and making sure that we fill the gaps. So, as I was talking about, we're getting material from friends of friends, and so it all sort of tends to be the same. It's sort of telling the same story. So we're really trying to be a bit more proactive in approaching people and organizations that sort of fill those gaps. That's a big part of the work that I do, is sort of taking a look at the collection, assessing, where are those little stories that aren't represented here in the archives, and then finding people and organizations that I think would have records that would fill those gaps. So yeah, it's a little bit different than most archives who are more passive in their collecting efforts. But yes, we still get offers all the time. And as a part of my job is, unfortunately saying no. So I'm looking to see, is it really a good fit for us? Would it be better off in another archive? And making suggestions as well for other places that it could go.
Do you sometimes send the materials to museums for exhibitions and things?
We do. So we do often lend things. So as I mentioned, the Morgan Toller plaque, that's currently on loan to the Human Rights Museum. It's a long-term loan. We also have some material right now on loan to the History Museum. It's over in Gatineau. They have a few of our items as well on display as part of their permanent collection, so it's a long-term loan as well. But I've also lent things to National Gallery and to smaller galleries as well. So,
so people around Canada can sometimes stumble upon materials
that's right.
from here.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. And I was at the History Museum the other day, and it has a little thing at the bottom saying, courtesy of the University of Ottawa. So yeah.
Can you show us around a little bit
sure.
how the things are organized?
Yeah. So this is a mess back here, but it really is. It's our storage area. So typically, as that when we do get donations, they come in and we put them on this table. And then what I do is I give it an accession number, so that's just a way of us keeping track of what's coming in, and it sits on these shelves, so new acquisitions you'll see over there, until an archivist can start working on the material. And yeah, we use this sort of table for doing lots of organizing, so it looks like a giant mess.
It's an organized mess.
It's an organized mess. We're doing a bit of cleanup right now, so you came at a time where everything's in a bit of jumble. But I will show you where we keep our women's archives. So this section of shelves here is where we keep our women's archives. So I guess now's a good time to sort of explain a little bit about the history. So all the boxes in this row here are part of the Canadian Women's Movement Archives collection. So the history of that, it was a volunteer-based feminist archive started by the editor of the Other Woman newspaper in, I guess it was the 70s that started. Her name was Pat Leslie, and she was collecting material in her apartment. And then eventually it was a group of volunteers that were working with her to just collect material from the movement. In 1992, I think it just got a little bit too big for them to take care of in the small. I guess it wasn't an apartment at that point. They'd moved to a house, but again, all volunteers. So they were looking for a home for the archives, and they approached the University of Ottawa, and we accepted it. So since then, we have been continuing to collect material that documents that history. So 10001, that's the Canadian Women's Movement Archives collection. So that's everything that came to us in 1992. I think there's almost 200 boxes. So you'll see it's down here, it's paper records, as well as the photographs I showed you, t-shirts, posters, what else is there, banners, there's everything. And then obviously too, you've got the sort of the artifacts like the plaque and those sorts of things. And then since then we've just been collecting more material. So we've got, I think we're at 186 different phone collections now. From in our women's archives, so it's growing. Some really important collections that we have. Yes, for sure. And there's a lot of untold stories in here. So the nice thing about the CWMA though is that there's a little bit of, there's not, you don't get the full story of an organization or an individual, but you get little bits of everything. So no matter what you're interested in, you're going to find some records in the CWMA. But we have some other really important collections. We've got the records of the National Association of Women in the Law. So that was one of the first groups of women lawyers. They were advocating for women's rights, and very important and representation of feminist issues in legislation. We've also got the records of the National Action Committee on the Status of Women, which is a very important umbrella organization, again, advocating for women's rights. We've got the records of, I'm just trying to think, like artists and photographers, publishing houses, as well as one of our new initiatives is collecting the records of women involved in science and technology. So that's our Women in STEM initiative. So it was noted that not a lot of records exist out there from women working in these non-traditional occupations, and so we've made it our mandate to try and ensure that no longer is the case. So we've been building on that. We have the records of Monique Fries. She was the first woman to graduate from the University of Ottawa in engineering, and that wasn't until the 60s. So that
it was very recent.
Yeah, very recent. Also a lot of women engineering associations. So we're again representing women involved in those sorts of occupations. I'm just trying to think what else we have. We have so much stuff. 180 plus collections.
Do you have any multimedia? Like
we do.
Movies, music?
We do. So it's interesting. So a lot of the material that actually came with the CWMA, as well as some of these newer collections, came on legacy formats like VHS tapes and audio cassettes. All of that stuff is degrading, unfortunately. So we are in this mad rush to try and digitize it to make sure that we're not losing it. So we have a digital archivist who's been going through and making sure that we save it before it's too late. So lots of, so the VHS has, presentations. It's got, I think that there's also some theater productions. We've got recordings of conferences and oral history interviews, so lots of really fascinating stuff that hasn't been seen before. Yeah, so that's a good place to start for research, is actually looking at some of that stuff that's been newly digitized, because it hasn't actually been seen before or heard before.
Can you show us how the system works?
Oh yeah! Ooh, our fancy shelves. Yeah, so you just press it and you can move the shelves. So compact shelving is a great way to make use of a limited amount of space. So yeah. So this area here is not accessible to the public. Everything we have here is is described online. So researcher can go into our database and tell us what they're interested in seeing. They tell us, we bring it from the back out to the front. They can sit in the reading room and look at the material. Not like a library, right? You can't unfortunately go back and just browse.
Yeah, but it's here for safety. It's like a time
Exactly.
capsule.
Exactly. Yeah.
Of feminist movement.
Yes. So.
It's
Yeah.
much safer than being in somebody's basement.
That's right. That's right. So it is temperature and humidity controlled in here. So just again ensuring that. Yeah. So these are. We had an exhibit. This stuff needs to actually go back. But here's an example of a T-shirt. One of the T-shirts that we have in our collection. So. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So these are, I can't remember what our exhibit was on actually. I think it was like lesbian mothers. I think that's what it was. But yeah, you can see some of the buttons that we have and some of the pictures. So, yeah, just a few things to put away.
It's amazing to see. You know how the buttons, they unite feminists around the world.
Yes. Well, activists of all sorts, right? It seems like there's buttons for every cause.
I love the posters. It's a very inspiring space to be in.
Yeah, for sure.
If you could wish for any artifact that ever existed, even though it might not even, it might be lost to history today or something like that, but then it would just appear in the archive. What would it be?
Well, I was trying to think about that, and I think when I look at all these pictures and I see all these protest banners, a lot of them just don't exist anymore, right? That's something that, they weren't meant to last. They were ephemeral, right? So they just haven't stood the chance, how do you say that?
English is not my first language.
Haven't stood the test of time. That's right. So they haven't stood the test of time, unfortunately, and they're lost. I mean, we're lucky that we do have the photographs, but how neat would it be to have the posters and have the banners? We do have some, but unfortunately not very many. It's interesting. So there was a protest recently on campus. I'm sure you're aware, protesting the war in Gaza, and obviously we're an activist archive, and we were thinking it would be really important to ensure that some of that material from that protest was preserved to document what was going on. Unfortunately, it all got destroyed, right? So none of that stuff is around. And there are obviously other records. There's people making posts online and tweets and those sorts of things, but that actual tactile stuff from the protest is gone. So when I think about things that would be really neat to have, because as I said, people are very visual. They like to hold things. They like to see things. It really illustrates all the things that people are fighting for. So yeah, that would be cool to have, but it is what it is. We do have some, so we are pretty lucky.
You just made me think, like, how are we gonna archive the TikToks, the YouTube videos?
I know, and I think that's a problem. When I think about all the things that are happening today, we did talk about a little bit, maybe, back in the 60s and 70s, people were out there on the street protesting. It's maybe not as prevalent as it was today, but they're still happening. And how are we preserving that? And yeah, all the things that are happening online. There certainly are programs out there that do capture like tweets and Facebook posts, but it's so complicated, right? It's like, who does it belong to, and like permissions and things like that. We had sort of been talking again about the protest on campus, and who really has the right we can technically go online and capture that stuff, but is that really our place? We are part of an institution that the students were protesting against, so I don't know if it really is, if we're the right home for that stuff. But it's a good question. Like, where is that history going? Is it there? Is it lost? It might be. I think some of the students had been archiving on their own, but where is that stuff going to end up in 10, 20, 30 years? Who knows, right?
Yeah, you mentioned that the materials that you have here come from private collections.
Yes.
Some people just like to gather their own life histories
Yes.
And then once that life comes to an end, if a family member inherits that, they give it away.
Yeah.
But some people are more organized than others.
Oh yes, definitely.
So I want to know how does that work. So do you sometimes get a donation that's like fully organized, like very archival, or are you ready for just to put to the shelf? And then sometimes you get like a bag of
yes,
things.
we definitely do. Obviously, everybody's different. Some people, are very, very organized. We recently got the records from a human rights lawyer. She was very organized. She has everything documented. Everything is in containers, list. That's obviously a dream, an archivist. I mean, we're going through things anyways and organizing and describing, but having all that done already when it gets here just makes our life a lot easier. But then, other people, they're not necessarily thinking about. They have other things that they're working on. They sort of just pile everything up, and then when they start cleaning up, it's sort of, this stuff to the archives, right? And then it's the job of the archivist to go through it, to sort of make sense of it all, and get it into a state where, researchers can see it. So it does take a lot more effort and work, but it doesn't mean that the records are less valuable, right? It's just what, some people are just different. So we get it all. I've seen it all.
So what would you advise for people who want to create their own fonds or collections, or who wish to perhaps donate here or anywhere else? How should they care for their things? And
well, obviously, I think if you're passionate about something and you want to collect what's of interest to you, right? I mean, that's spend the time just doing it for yourself, right? And then at the end of the day, if it's got historical value, an archive will tell you that. But do it for yourself. Don't necessarily think about like gathering this archives that you want to donate. Like, it really has to be a passion project. And what's so fascinating is that these women knew that they were doing something important, right? So they kept it all, because I think that's a testament, right? It's that they knew that they were part of something big. Wow, that's great. But it doesn't have to be big. It's even these little tiny things. We do collect the records of activists, but we also collect the records of everyday women. So a recent collection that we acquired is the stories of new mothers, which really resonated with me as a new mother, and talking about the experiences of these moms having new babies. No, they're not doing anything out of the ordinary. They're just going about their daily lives, but that's still really important, right? So you might not think that things are important or that you're doing something out of the ordinary, but just holding on to a few of those things which are capturing, what you're doing in your life, right? It could one day prove to have some value, and an archive might be there saying, "Oh yes."
And it's a way to resist, because women and other minority groups have always been pushed to the side of history.
Exactly.
They were the invisible agents through the history who were doing stuff, but nobody cared enough for it to be recorded.
Exactly.
And these buttons and pictures, they all prove that these women existed.
Mm-hmm.
Their struggles and their joys were real.
Exactly.
And their work continues on today in our own work.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I mean, that's why we're here, right? We're really trying to ensure that doesn't happen, and that those stories are told and known for the future. So.
And what are some of the challenges of this work?
Yeah, I mean, for us, our biggest challenge is funding. It's the way of archives everywhere. Not having the people in place to do some of the things that we want to do. So, we would love to do a lot more outreach. We would love to have more events here. But at the end of the day, there's only a handful of us here, and we can only do a certain amount. So, our number one job is obviously caring for the records and making them available to researchers. And then everything else on top of that is a nice to have. So we do what we can, but it can be a struggle, because there's tons of stuff that we could do to make this more known. But it takes people. So we are very appreciative of the work that you're doing, trying to help enhance that people know that we're out there. So we do appreciate it.
And you also accept volunteer work, so
of
students
course,
who want to get some experience or take a sneak peek into the collection?
Yes, of course. Volunteers are crucial for the work that we do. Right now we have volunteers that are helping with the audio cassettes that I talked about, so helping us to digitize them and to describe them and do transcripts for us. So, you know, that's really, really important work. They're making those recordings available to researchers now for the first time. So, yeah, we could not exist without volunteers. So, yes, volunteer.
Yeah, I hope that somebody might stumble upon this among the students of U Ottawa and then realize, oh wait, this is on campus. I could just hop here after my classes or in the gap between the classes.
Definitely. So that would be great.
We're nearing the end, so if you wish to share a message or a call for action or just say something to the audience.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, as I mentioned, obviously, if you are interested in archives, volunteering is a really great way to learn about collections as well as learn about the profession. And then again, we were talking a little bit about collecting and making your own archive. I think that's something that's really important is just remembering that some of the things that you're collecting in your day-to-day activities can have importance. So I know there's this big rush to throw everything out and to clean up and all that thing, but just, you know, before you do that, think about what it represents, right? And to with your family members, get their stories, listen to them. I think that's really important.
Marie Kondo is your nemesis.
Yeah, I guess so, right? But I will say an important part of my job is actually going through and getting rid of the stuff. I mean, you can just think of all the things that we receive, and not all of it is archival. So that's a really important part of the work that we do is making appraisal judgments. So yeah, unfortunately, we can't keep it all.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Yes,
for opening the doors.
Yes, of course. And we are open to the public. I encourage anyone to just come in and check out what we have. The archivists that I work with are really knowledgeable. They know this history. They work with it every day, so they're happy to help in any way. So. And
you also have the digital archive or the collections online?
Yeah, we do have collections online, so we have a database. It's all of our descriptions are there, and then as well as a handful of digital material that's available.
Through that website, people can make an appointment to come and see.
Yeah, but we are open. If you don't make an appointment, we're not going to turn you away. We're happy to help. So yeah. Yeah.
This was very lovely.
Oh,
I hope that people will enjoy it. I mean, I did. I was very excited to come here.
And these are just a few things that we have. As I said, you know, we have over 180 collections of material. So, and yeah, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of boxes. So lots of things to discover here.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you all for watching. Maybe subscribe and like if you enjoyed watching this. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions about the archives or if this inspired you to make your own collections at home or at least to visit a nearby museum or a gallery exhibition of the feminist movement to see that we've been here for a very long time and we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I think that is apparent from this very brave women who are very fed up with what they are fighting against, but we're all still here.
Yeah.
Doing it.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I should give a plug. We have a newsletter as well, so you can go on our website and subscribe to our newsletter as well to hear about all the things that we're doing and the events that we have planned. So we do have an exhibit coming up. It's called Women Against Imperialism, so it'll be a good one.
Spicy.
It'll be spicy, yeah. So.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. Bye.